Welcome back to The Deep Dive. This time, we're looking at something you all flagged for us. It's a memo making the rounds at the State Department, and it looks like it could really change how USAID does things, big time.
Yeah, this document, reviewed by Wired and first reported on by Politico, proposes a pretty significant shift in how the U.S. approaches international aid. We're going to take a deep dive into this today, really try to get to the heart of what's being proposed and what it might mean for humanitarian work around the world.
Sounds like a potentially huge overhaul. So the first thing that jumps out is this idea of renaming USAI, right, to the U.S. International Humanitarian Assistance, or IHA, and bringing it directly under the Secretary of State. What's the thinking behind a move like that?
Well, that's a key part of this whole proposal, right? I mean, essentially what it would do is bring USAID much closer to the State Department, align its work more tightly with the overall foreign policy goals. It's important to remember that this isn't happening in a vacuum.
You're absolutely right. I mean, USAID employees have already been through a lot of uncertainty, right? I mean, in the previous administration, we saw staff being put on leave, the workforce being cut, even payments to partner organizations being suspended for a while.
Yeah, and even though a federal judge stepped in to stop the agency from being completely dismantled, this memo, I think, shows that there's still a desire to restructure it, to change the way it works. So it's no surprise that this proposal, especially this whole blockchain idea, has caught a lot of people at USAID off guard.
It definitely feels like something big is brewing. Okay, let's get into what everyone's talking about, blockchain. This memo says they want to leverage blockchain technology in USAID's procurement processes. Specifically, it states that all distributions would also be secured and tracked via blockchain technology to radically increase security, transparency, and traceability. Now, when you hear that, what does it actually mean? How would that work in practice?
Well, that's where things get a little fuzzy. The memo itself doesn't really go into the specifics. It's not clear if they're thinking about actually using cryptocurrencies, like maybe stablecoins, to deliver aid directly, or if they just want to use blockchain as a kind of digital ledger to track where money and resources are going. So for you to really grasp what this could mean, we need to think about these different possibilities.
So are we talking about sending aid as digital currency or just keeping better records with blockchain? That's a big difference.
Oh, absolutely. A huge difference. Using something like a stablecoin, which is basically a cryptocurrency pegged to the US dollar, so its value stays pretty stable.
Yeah.
That's totally different from just tracking things on a blockchain. And, the experts who work in humanitarian technology, they've been pretty skeptical of this proposal.
Like Linda Raftery, right? She's a consultant, and she called this a faux technological solution for a problem that doesn't exist. What's she getting at there?
Well, her point is this. We already have tools and tech that can make aid distribution secure, transparent, and traceable. So why add all the complexity of blockchain if it's not solving a real problem, right? Maybe the administration is overestimating what blockchain can do here. Maybe it's a solution looking for a problem.
Yeah, Giulio Coppi from Access Now had a similar concern. He basically said blockchain might not be cheaper or more effective than the systems we already have for payments and databases. He even used the term tech solutionist approach, implying that sometimes we just jump to tech as the answer, even when it might not be the best solution in the real world.
It's interesting, isn't it? You've got these really strong doubts, but then you have these examples of blockchain actually being used in humanitarian work, at least on a trial basis.
Right, like the UNHCR pilot in 2022. They used a stablecoin to get cash assistance to people displaced by the conflict in Ukraine. And the Kenya Red Cross has been working with the International Committee of the Red Cross on stuff like the Humanitarian token solution, which is a blockchain-based system. What do those examples tell us?
Well, they show that there is an interest in testing blockchain in this sector, especially for direct cash transfers. You see, in disaster zones or places where banking systems are shaky, blockchain can potentially get aid to people faster and more directly.
We even heard from someone, an NGO representative who wanted to remain anonymous, who's actually using blockchain right now. They said stablecoins can definitely make it easier and faster to get cash where it's needed, especially in a disaster. So it sounds like it has some potential benefits.
It does, but this person also raises a really important point. They talk about a new burden that comes with implementing these blockchain systems. Smaller, local NGOs, the ones often doing the most on the ground, they're going to have to learn and manage these systems. Could be a lot to take on.
It makes you think about the resources and expertise needed to really use blockchain effectively, especially when some organizations are already stretched thin.
Absolutely. It's not just about whether the tech works. It's about the whole network of partners who deliver aid and whether they can actually adapt to and use these new systems. If it's too hard to learn or if the infrastructure isn't there, it could actually slow things down instead of making them more efficient.
Let's talk about another big part of this memo. It really emphasizes tying funding to deliverables and outcomes, not just funding projects, but making sure they have a real impact. The idea is to make sure taxpayer money is being used as effectively as possible to get the maximum impact. What do you think about that shift in focus?
I think it makes sense. The focus on results and accountability, that's been a big conversation in the aid world for a while now. It's about moving beyond just funding activities and making sure those programs are actually making a difference, making measurable positive changes for the people they're supposed to help.
We talked to a USAID employee, also anonymous, who said a lot of contracts already work this way, with payments tied to milestones and deliverables. But they also worried that these kinds of rigid agreements could cause problems in places where things are really unpredictable, like conflict zones or disaster areas. What if the situation changes?
That's a really important point to consider. Humanitarian crises, they're constantly changing. If a funding model is too focused on preset outcomes, you lose the flexibility to adapt when things on the ground shift, which they often do very quickly, right? You need to be able to change your priorities and your approach when necessary.
Linda Raftery actually thought the language in the memo about this was kind of misleading, almost like it was implying that there's a lot of corruption at USAID, which isn't really the case.
Right, like the current system is somehow broken or wasteful. But her point was that USAID already has accountability and oversight.
So if we look at all of this together, there seems to be a real tension here, right? On the one hand, you have the administration pushing for this new blockchain technology, and they want more control. They want to see measurable results. And on the other hand, you have these experts who are skeptical. They're saying, wait a minute, do we really need blockchain for this? Do we have better tools already? What about the burden on our partners, especially smaller organizations? And what about the need to be flexible in really tough situations?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? This memo lays out all these good intentions, more security, more transparency, more efficiency, ultimately more impact. But then it also includes all these critical perspectives that make you wonder if those goals are realistic, if there might be some unintended consequences. It really raises some important questions for everyone listening, you know?
Yeah.
We've got these different viewpoints, a lot of complexity. So what do you think are the most important things to consider when we talk about using new tech, like blockchain, in humanitarian aid? And how can we make sure that the focus stays on actually helping people, those who need it most? What questions does this deep dive leave you with about the future of aid and the role that technology should play?
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive, and we'll see you next time.